Hello and welcome to Tech Cloud Solution, where we help you master cloud certification. In this video, we will walk through the Microsoft AZ-900 Azure Fundamentals exam questions with detailed mock test answers and explanations. Whether you are just starting your cloud journey or an IT pro brushing up on Azure, this exam walkthrough will sharpen your skills. Cloud certifications are more valuable than ever, and AZ-900 is the first step to landing high-paying cloud jobs in 2025. Ready to boost your confidence? Stay tuned for the walkthrough. And don't forget, you can visit Tech Cloud Solution for free PDF guides and practice mock tests to ace your exam. Let's start. Question number one. Connecting to a secure resource requires both authentication and authorization. What is the purpose of authentication? Select the correct option. The options are A. To validate that the users logging into the resource is who they say they are with a password, fingerprint, or other mechanism. B. To allow the administrator to assign access to a secure resource to limit the number of users who has access. And C. To validate the specific resources the user has access to, then grant them a token to allow access to use the resource requested. So the correct answer is A. So basically, authentication uses things like something you know, something you are, and some things you have to verify identity. This question requires you to select the correct options from the drop down. You are not required to submit an Azure support request for A. Subscription quota increase, B. Technical assistance, C. Creating a new resource group, and D. Billing. So the correct answer is C. Creating a new resource group. So you can create resource group using Azure Portal or CLI or Power Bash. Azure support ticket can be raised for below help like technical assistance, billing, subscription quota increase. Question number 3. What Azure product allows you to auto scale virtual machines from 1 to 1000 instances and also provides load balancing services built in? Select the correct option. And the options are A. Virtual machine scale sets, B. Application gateway, C. Azure app services, and D. Azure virtual machines. So the correct answer is A. Virtual machine scale sets. So Azure virtual machine scale sets let you create and manage group of load balanced VMs. The number of VM instances can automatically increase or decrease in response to demand or a defined schedule. Scale sets provide high availability to your application and allow you to centrally manage, configure, and update a large number of VMs. Now let's check why other options are not correct. That is Azure Virtual Machines. So it gives you the flexibility of virtualization for a wide range of computing solutions with a support for Linux, Windows Server, SQL Server, Oracle, IBM, SAP, and more. Auto scaling of virtual machines is achieved by using scale sets. Next option, Azure App Service. It enables you to quickly and easily build web and mobile apps for any platform or device. It offers auto scaling and high availability, supports both Windows and Linux, and enables automated deployments from GitHub, Azure DevOps, or any Git repo. The last option, that is Application Gateway. So, Application Gateway is a web traffic load balancer that enables you to manage traffic to your web application and also perform URL based routing. It is the connection through which users connect to your application. So, now next move to the next question. Question number 4. Which of the following Azure features is most likely to deliver the most immediate savings when it comes to reducing Azure cost? You have to select the correct option, and the options are: A. Using Azure policy to restrict the user of expensive VM SKUs. B. Using Azure reserved instances for most of your virtual machines. C. Changing your storage accounts from globally redundant to locally redundant. And D. Auto shutdown of development and QA servers overnight and on weekends. So the correct answer is B. So Azure reservation helps you save money by committing to 1 year or 3 year plans for multiple products. Reservation can significantly reduce your cost up to 72%. Now other options are incorrect, as auto shutdown of development and QA servers overnight and on weekends is incorrect, as it will help to save you compute cost when resources are not in use, but you will still pay for the storage and other cost. Reservation helps to save cost upfront. Now the next option, that is changing your storage account from globally redundant to locally redundant. So this will help in some saving but increase risk, as your storage won't be high available. Now the last option, using Azure policy to restrict the user of expensive VM SKUs. So you should decide SKUs based on your workload and use reservation to save cost. Question number 5. Which of the following is not an example of infrastructure as a service? And the options are: A. Azure SQL Database. B. SQL Server in a VM. C. Virtual machine. And D. Virtual machine scale sets. So the correct answer is A. Azure SQL Database. Azure SQL Server Database is a relational database as a service based on the latest stable version of the Microsoft SQL Server Database engine. SQL Database is a high performance, reliable, fully managed secure database that you can use to build data driven applications and websites in the programming language of your choice without needing to manage infrastructure. Now the other options are not correct, as virtual machine, scale sets, and SQL Server on VM are examples of infrastructure as a service. Next question. For all your Azure resources, visit our official website Tech Cloud Solution. Here you will find PDF dumps and practice tests designed to help you excel in your Azure certification journey. We are currently running a special quiz for the AZ-900 exam. By participating and following the simple rules, you can qualify to receive 250 question PDF and invaluable resources for mastering the AZ-900. To participate, simply click Start Quiz to begin. So here you will have to fill your name and the email address. After that, the quiz will get started. If any questions includes images, you can easily click or tap the image to zoom in for a closer look. Stay tuned for the link in the comments, and best of luck on your path to Azure certification success. Question number 6. How can an architect easily implement a deny by default policy so that VM can't connect to each other? Select the correct option. And the options are: A. Allocate each VM on its own virtual network. B. Create a network security group rule that prevents access from another VM on the same network. C. Azure Firewall. And D. Configure Azure DDoS protection to limit network access within the virtual network. So the correct answer is B, that is create a network security group rule that prevents access from another VM on the same network. So a network security group rule enables you to filter traffic to and from Azure resources in an Azure virtual network. An NSG can contain multiple inbound and outbound security rules that enable you to filter traffic to and from resources by source and destination IP address, port, and protocol. Now let's check why other options are not correct. That is, allocate each VM on its own virtual network. So although you can isolate each VM by placing it on a separate virtual network, is there an easier way that allows all VMs to safely exist on the same virtual network? So NSG is a simple way without changing physical architecture. Next option, that is configure Azure DDoS protection to limit network access within the virtual network. So it helps protect your Azure resources from DDoS attack, but it does not specify connection rules within a virtual network. And the last option, that is Azure Firewall. So Azure Firewall applies IP based restriction to access Azure resources from the internet, but it doesn't specify connection rules within a virtual network. Question number 7, select two correct statements for Azure subscription. And the options are: A, billing is applied to each subscription separately. B, an Azure resource group contains multiple Azure subscription. C, multiple subscription cannot be created within an Azure account. D, subscription is dependent on a region. And E, single Microsoft account can be used to manage multiple Azure subscription. So for this, the correct statements are A and E. So if you want to practice this type of quiz questions, you can refer our official website, that is Tech Cloud Solution. Here you will get the exam questions PDF as well as the mock test. Question number 8. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. You can create an Azure support request from Microsoft Support Center. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct. Otherwise, select the correct answer. And the options are: A, Microsoft Knowledge Center. B, no change needed. C, Security and Compliance Admin Center. And D, Azure Portal. So the correct answer is D, Azure Portal. So Azure Portal enables you to create and manage support requests, also known as support tickets. You can create and manage requests in the Azure Portal. You can also create and manage requests programmatically using the Azure Support Ticket REST API. Question number 9. A company is planning to use Azure services and they wanted to understand the complete SLA offering provided by Microsoft for these services. Which of the following statement regarding Azure SLA is correct? Select the correct option, and the options are: A, each Azure service offering has a unique SLA. B, SLAs are not contractual documents. C, the Azure subscription has a single all encompassing SLA. And D, Azure preview features are covered by an SLA. So the correct answer is A. So Microsoft maintain its commitment to provide customers with high quality products and services by adhering to comprehensive operational policies, standards and practices. Formal documents are known as service level agreement, captures the specific terms that define the performance standard that apply to Azure. So SLA describes Microsoft's commitment to providing Azure customers with certain performance standard. There are unique SLAs for individual Azure products and services. SLAs also specify what happens if a service or product fails to perform to a governing SLA's specification. Question number 10. A company is planning to use Azure solution and want to understand the Azure global infrastructure. Which statement regarding Azure reasons is correct? And the options are: A, They are contained within availability zone. B. They are contained within data centers. C. Regions contain a maximum of two availability zone. Azure service availability can vary by region. So the correct answer is D. So all Azure services are not available in all the Azure regions. Service availability varies from region to region. Region is a geographical area on the planet containing at least one but potentially multiple data centers that are in close proximity and networked together with a low latency network. Question number 11. What is the name of the collective set of APIs that provide machine learning and artificial intelligence service to your applications like voice recognition, image tagging, and chatbot? And the options are A. Azure HD Insight, B. Azure Synapse, C. Cognitive Services, and D. Azure Machine Learning Service. So the correct answer is C, that is cognitive service. So cognitive service are a collection of domain specific pre-trained AI models that can be customized with your data. Azure Cognitive Services enables developers to easily add cognitive features into their application with cognitive solution that can see, hear, speak, understand, and even begin to reason. Now the other options are not correct as Azure Synapse is a limitless analytics service that brings together enterprise data warehousing and big data analytics. It gives you the freedom to query data on your terms using either serverless on demand or provision resources. Azure HD Insight is an analytics service for enterprise to process massive amount of data. HD Insight allows you to run popular open source framework and create cluster types such as Apache Spark, Apache Hadoop, Apache Kafka. Now the last option, machine learning. So machine learning service provides a cloud-based environment that can be used to develop, train, test, deploy, manage, and track machine learning models to implement artificial intelligence. Question number 12. A team of developers at your company plans to deploy and then remove 50 customized virtual machines each week. 30 of the virtual machines run Windows Server 2016 and 20 of the virtual machines run on Ubuntu Linux. You need to recommend which Azure service will minimize cost and the administrative effort required to deploy and remove the virtual machines. What should you recommend? And the options are A. Azure Resource Manager template, B. Azure Virtual Machine Scale Sets, C. Azure Reserved Virtual Machines Instances, and D. Azure Dev Test Labs. So the correct answer is D. So it provides self-service cloud environment, Windows or Linux, for demo or training purposes to speed up the development process. Now the others options are not correct as Azure reserved virtual machine instance. So it help you save money by committing to 1 year or 3 year plans for multiple products. Now the next option, Azure Virtual Machine Skill Sets. So it let you create and manage a group of VM instances that can automatically increase or decrease in response to demand. And the last option, that is Azure Resource Manager template. So templates are JSON files that define the infrastructure and configuration for your project. It's used to automate resource creation but does not help in resource management and cost saving. Question number 13. Which of the following provides a set of tools for monitoring, allocating, and optimizing your Azure cost? Select the correct option. And the options are A. Budgets, B. Azure Pricing Calculator, C. Total Cost of Ownership, and D. Azure Cost Management. So the correct answer is D. Azure Cost Management. So cost management provides a set of tools for monitoring, allocating and optimizing your Azure cost. The main features of the cost management toolset include reporting, data enrichment, budgets, alerting, recommendation and price. Now the others options are not correct as Azure pricing calculator. So it is used for estimating the cost of Azure products. It's used to get the cost of Azure products before you purchase them. So it cannot be used to monitor the uses of your service. The next option, total cost of ownership. So TCO helps you to use to estimate cost savings you can realize by migrating to Azure. It cannot be used to monitor or analyze the cost of existing Azure services. And the last option, budgets. So budget help you to proactively manage cost and to monitor how spending progresses over time. When the budget thresholds you have created are exceeded, only notifications are triggered. It cannot be used to allocate or optimize the cost of services. Question number 14. Which Azure configuration prevents Azure label machine updates from different availability zones from being down at the same time? Select the correct option. The options are A. Load balancing, B. Update domain, C. Fault domain, and D. Availability domain. So the correct answer is update domain. So update domain is a logical group of the underlying hardware that can undergo maintenance or be rebooted at the same time. As you create VMs within an availability set, the Azure platform automatically distributes your VMs across these update domains. Now the other options are not correct as fault domain. So it is a set of hardware component that share a single point of failure. To be a fault tolerant to a certain level, you need multiple fault domains at that level. Next option, load balancing. So load balancer provides high availability by distributing incoming traffic among healthy virtual machines. The load balancer is nothing to do to support fault tolerance at machine level updates. Last option, availability zones. So it provides data center level fault tolerance, which means deploying an application in multiple AZs will make sure that your application will remain functioning even in case of a complete data center outage. AZs cannot control fault tolerance at the machine level update. Question number 15. This question requires you to select the correct options from the drop down. Capability to quickly provision cloud resource is called. The options are agility, B elasticity, C fault tolerance, and D high availability. So the correct answer is B elasticity. So elasticity is the ability to automatically or dynamically increase or decrease resources as needed. Elastic resources match the current needs and resources are added or removed automatically to meet the future needs when it is needed. Now the other options are not correct as agility. So agility is the ability to respond to change rapidly based on changes to market or environments, ensuring fast time to the market. The next option, that is fault tolerance. So fault tolerance is the ability to remain up and running even in the event of a component no longer functioning. The last option, high availability. So high availability is the ability to keep services up and running for long periods of time with a very little downtime. Question number 16. You plan to migrate a web applications to Azure. The web application is accessed by external users. You need to recommend a cloud deployment solution to minimize the amount of administrative effort used to manage the web application. What should you include in the recommendation? The options are A. Platform as a service, B. Software as a service, C. Function as a service, and D. Infrastructure as a service. So the correct answer is A. Platform as a service. So it allows you to avoid the complexity of buying and managing software licenses and the underlying application infrastructure. You manage the application and services you develop, and the cloud service provider typically manages everything else. Whereas other options are not correct, as function as a service, software as a service, and infrastructure as a service. Question number 17. What's the easiest way for an organization to combine security data from all of its monitoring tools into a single report that it can take action on? Select the correct option. And the options are: A. Build a custom tool that collects security data and displays a report through a web application. B. Collect a security data in Azure Sentinel. And C. Look through each security log daily and email a summary to your team. So the correct answer is B. So Azure Sentinel is a Microsoft's cloud-based SIEM. A SIEM aggregates security data from many different sources to provide additional capabilities for threat detection and responding to threats. It also provides capabilities for threat detection and response. Now the other options are not correct. Option: build a custom tool that collects security data and displays a report through a web application. Although you could take this approach, but Sentinel is a fully featured service on Azure that provides this functionality. And the last option, that is, look through each security log daily and email a summary to your team. So this approach is time consuming. It might also delay important security events from being addressed. Question number 18. What are the characteristics of the public cloud? Select two correct options. And the options are: A. Unsecured connection. B. Dedicated hardware. C. Self-service management. D. Limited storage. And E. Metered pricing. So the correct answer is C and E. So basically, public cloud is a computing service offered by a third party providers, that is Azure, over the public internet, making them available to anyone who wants to use or purchase them. Public clouds can save companies from the expensive cost of having to purchase, manage, and maintain on premises hardware and application infrastructure. Question number 19. You want to run application code without creating, configuring, or maintaining a server. Which one you choose from below? And the options are: A. Platform as a service. B. Infrastructure as a service model. C. Serverless model. And D. Software as a service model. So the correct answer is C. Serverless model. So serverless computing lets you run application code without creating, configuring, or maintaining a server. The core idea is that your application is broken into separate functions that can run when triggered by some action. Few examples of serverless application on Azure are Logic Apps, Function, or Service Fabric. Now the other options are not correct, as platform as a service allows you to avoid the expense and complexity of buying and managing software licenses and the underlying application infrastructure. The next option, software as a service. So it allows users to connect to and use cloud-based apps over the internet. Common examples are email, calendaring, and office tools. Now the last option, infrastructure as a service. So it is an instant computing infrastructure provisioned and managed over the internet. Question number 20. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. Azure policies provide a common platform for deploying objects to cloud infrastructure and for implementing consistency across the Azure environment. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise select the correct answer. The options are: A. No change needed. B. Resource group provide. C. Management groups provide. And D. Azure Resource Manager provides. So the correct answer is D. So Azure Resource Manager is the deployment and management service for Azure. It provides a management layer that enables you to create, update, and delete resources in your Azure account. Now the other options are not correct, that is management groups. So management groups are containers that help you manage access, policies, and compliance for multiple subscription. The next option, resource group. So resource group is a unit of management for resources in Azure, allows you to logically group Azure resources together. This allows you to manage the application collectively over its life cycle rather than manage components individually. Now the last option, Azure policies. So Azure policy helps to enforce organizational standards and to access compliance at scale. Azure policy evaluates resources in Azure by comparing the properties of those resources to business rules. You want to orchestrate a workflow by using APIs from several well-known services. Which is the best option for this scenario? And the options are A. Azure Kubernetes Service, B. Azure Logic Apps, C. Azure App Service, and D. Azure Function. So for this question, the correct answer is B, that is Azure Logic Apps. So Azure Logic Apps makes it easy to create a workflow across well-known services with less effort than writing code and manually orchestrating all the steps yourself. Now look why other options are not correct. So Azure Function. So Azure Function could be used, but it might require more effort to research the APIs, write the code, and manually orchestrate the services. In this scenario, functions are not the best option. Next option, Azure App Service. So with app services, you need to write and deploy code on VMs, which require more resources, effort, and cost to solve this problem. And the last option, that is Azure Kubernetes Service. So it is an open source orchestration software for deploying, managing, and scaling containers. You can write and deploy code in a container and manage it by Kubernetes. But this is a huge effort to solve this problem, which can be easily solved with logic apps without writing code. Question number 22. A company is planning to move some of its on premises resources to Azure. They have to classify expenses as part of the business justification. Which category would cooling expenses expense come under? And the options are A. Secondary expenditure, B. Primary expenditure, C. Capital expenditure, and D. Operational expenditure. So the correct answer is D. So operational expenditure is spending money on services or products now and being billing for them now. You can deduct this expense in the same year you spend it. There is no upfront cost as you pay for a service or product as you use it. So the following are different costs considered as it has many like software licensing, hosting expenses, electric bills, and so on. Now you can look why other options are not correct as capital expenditure. So capital expenditure is the upfront spending of money on physical infrastructure and then deducting that upfront expense over time. The upfront cost from capex has a value that reduces over time. Now other option, that is primary expenditure and secondary expenditure, it's not a valid expense category. Question number 23. Your company plans to migrate an Azure environment. The company has 10 departments and you need to ensure that each department can use a different payment options for the Azure services it consumes. What should you create for each department? And the options are A. Resource manager, B. Subscription, C. Management group, and D. Resource group. So the correct answer is B. Subscription. So Azure subscription is a logical unit of Azure service that links to an Azure account. You can have multiple subscriptions, one for each department. You can use department subscription to define boundaries around Azure product, services, and resources. Now, other options like resource groups. So, it is not correct as it is a unit of management of resources in Azure, allows you to logically group Azure resources together. You cannot have a different payment options, one for each department using resource groups. Next options, management groups. So management groups are containers to manage multiple subscription. You should create multiple subscriptions, one for each department, and then logically group subscriptions in management groups based on the company policy and compliance. The last option, Resource Manager. Azure Resource Manager is the deployment and management service for Azure. It provides a management layer that enables you to create, update, and delete resources in your Azure account. You cannot manage payment using Resource Manager. Question number 24. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. Pricing calculator can be used to estimate cost savings when migrating to Azure. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise select the correct answer. And the options are A. No change needed, B. Azure cost management, C. Total cost of ownership calculator, and D. Budget. So the correct statement is total cost of ownership calculator. So it is a tool that you use to estimate cost savings you can realize by migrating to Azure. The TCO calculator generates a detailed report on the details you enter and the adjustment you make. The report allows you to compare the cost of your on premises infrastructure with the cost using Azure products and services to host your infrastructure in the cloud. Now the other options that is not correct, that is Azure cost management. So it is a set of tools for monitoring, allocating, and optimizing your Azure cost. Cost management can be used once you started using the Azure cloud to evaluate the cost of resources or services you are using. Next option, budgets. So budgets help you to get information about spending on different resources and services to proactively manage cost and to monitor how spending progresses over time. Now the next option, pricing calculator. So pricing calculator is a tool that helps you estimate the cost of Azure products. You choose the Azure products you need and configure them according to your specific requirement. Azure then provides a detailed estimate of the cost associated with your selection and configuration. Question number 25. Which of the following choices would not be used to automate a CI CD process? Select the correct option. The options are A. GitHub Action, B. Azure Pipelines, and C. Azure Boards. So the correct option is C. Azure Boards. So Azure Board is an agile project management tool. It would not be used to automate a CI/CD process. Other options are not correct as GitHub Actions and Azure Pipelines can be used to automate a CI/CD process. If you want to practice our quiz, you can refer our official website, that is Tech Cloud Solution, for the quiz and all the Azure and AWS resources. I will give you the link in the comment section. Question number 26. What explains details about the personal data Microsoft processes, how Microsoft processes it, and for what purposes? Select the correct option. And the options are A. Azure Security Center, B. Azure Service Health, C. Compliance Manager, D. Microsoft Privacy Statement. So the correct option is D. So the Microsoft Privacy Statement explains what personal data Microsoft processes, how Microsoft processes it, and for what purposes. Now other options you can look at, that is Compliance Manager. Compliance Manager is a risk assessment dashboard that provides ongoing risk assessments with a risk based score reference displayed in a dashboard view for regulation and standards. Next option, Azure Security Center. So Azure Security Center is a monitoring service that provides threat protection across all of your services both in Azure and on premises. The last option, that is Azure Service Health. So Azure Service Health helps you prepare for planned maintenance and changes that could affect the availability of your resources. It also provides personalized guidance and support when issues with Azure services affect you. It can notify you, help you understand the impact of issues, and keep you updated as the issue is resolved. Question number 27. An Azure administrator plans to run a PowerShell script that creates Azure resources. You need to recommend which computer configuration to use to run the script. Select three correct options. The options are A. Run the script from a computer that runs Linux and has the Azure CLI tool installed. B. Run the script from a computer that runs Android operating system and uses Azure Cloud Shell Bash mode. Option C. Run the script from a computer that runs Mac OS and has PowerShell core installed. D. Run the script from a computer that runs Windows OS and uses Azure Bash installed. And E. Run the script from a computer that runs Mac OS and has the PowerShell installed. The correct options are A, B, and C. Question number 28. This question requires you to select the correct options from the drop down. To enforce resource tagging so the billing can be managed, you will use A. Azure Policy, B. Azure Templates, C. Compliance Manager, and D. Azure Blueprints. So the correct answer is A. Azure Policy. So Azure Policy can be used to enforce tagging on resources. You can create a policy for tagging and apply this policy either on subscription or resource group so that any resource created under the resource group will follow the policy for tagging. Now you can look why other options are not correct. Azure templates. So Azure Resource Manager templates are JSON files that define the infrastructure and configuration for your project. In the template, you specify the resources to deploy and the properties for those resources. These properties should comply with all the policies applicable to resources. Next option, Azure Blueprints. So it enables cloud architects to define a repeatable set of Azure resources that implement and adhere to an organization standards, patterns, and requirements. Next options, compliance manager. So it provides ongoing risk assessment with a risk based score reference displayed in a dashboard view for regulation and standards. Question number 29. Which of the following should be used when the primary concern is to perform work in response to an event, often via REST command that needs a response in a few seconds? Select the correct options. The options are A. Logic App, B. Azure Container, C. Azure App Service, and D. Azure Functions. So the correct answer is D. Azure Functions. So Azure Functions are used when you need to perform work in response to an event, timer, or message from another Azure service, and when that work can be completed quickly within seconds or less. Now the other options, that is Azure App Service. Azure App Service enables you to quickly and easily build web and mobile apps for any platform or device. Now Logic Apps. So Logic App is a cloud service that helps you automate and orchestrate tasks, business processes, and workflows. The last option, Azure Container. So Container provides a consistent, isolated execution environment for application. Question number 30. A company has a set of virtual machines that define in Azure. One of the machines was down due to issues with the underlying Azure infrastructure. The server was down for an extended period of time and breached the standard SLA defined by Microsoft. How will Microsoft reimburse the downtime cost? The options are A. By directly sending money to the customer's bank account, B. By providing service credits to the customer, C. By spinning up another virtual machine free of cost for the client, and D. by providing a service free of cost to use for a specific duration of time. So the correct answer is B. So SLA describes how Microsoft will respond if an Azure product or service fails to perform to its governing SLA's specification. Customers may have a discount applied to their Azure bill in form of service credits as compensation for an underperforming Azure product or service. Which of the following statements are correct in the context of factors that affects cost in Azure? Select two correct options, and the options are: A. If you store 10 TB of data in Azure Blob Storage, the pricing will be different and it depends on which Azure region your data is located. B. Transferring data between Azure storage accounts in different Azure regions is not free. C. Outbound data traffic from Azure to external destination is always free. D. If you transfer data between Azure storage accounts in different Azure regions, you will not get charged. The transfer is free. E. If you store 10 TB of data in Azure Blob Storage, it will always cost the same regardless of Azure region in which the data is located. F. Data transfer between Azure services located in two different regions is always free. So the correct options are A and B. Question number 32. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. To use Azure data centers that are made available with power, cooling, and networking capabilities independent from other data centers in a region. Choose a region that supports availability zones. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise, select the correct answer. The options are: A. Zone, B. Geography, C. Availability set, and D. No change needed. So the correct answer is no change needed. So availability zones are physically separate locations with their own power, cooling, and networking within an Azure region that use availability sets to provide additional fault tolerance. Azure can help make your app highly available through availability zones within 99.9% Azure SLA. Now the other option, that is geography. So Azure divides the world into geographies that are defined by geopolitical boundaries or country borders. Azure geography is a discrete market typically containing two or more regions that preserves data residency and compliance boundaries. Next option, availability set. So availability sets ensure your application remains online if a high impact maintenance event is required or if a hardware failure occurs with 99.95% Azure SLA. Availability sets are made up of update domains and fault domain. Now the last option, that is zone. A zone is a geographical grouping of Azure regions for billing purposes. The following zones exist and include the sample regions as listed below. So it has zone 1, 2, 3 and DE zone 1. Question number 33. You have a virtual machines named MyVM that run Windows Server. MyVM is in the Australia East Azure region. Which Azure service should you use from the Azure portal to view service failure notification that can affect the availability of MyVM? And the options are: A. Azure Monitor, B. Microsoft Defender for Identity, C. Azure Event Hubs, and D. Azure Advisor. So the correct answer is A. Azure Monitor. Azure Monitor maximize the availability and performance of your application by delivering a comprehensive solution for collecting, analyzing, and acting on telemetry from your cloud and on-premises environment. Now look other options are not correct as Azure Advisor. So Azure Advisor Hub provides best practices recommendation to optimize Azure resources. Next option, Microsoft Defender for Identity. So Microsoft Defender for Identity is capable of detecting known malicious attacks and techniques, security issues and risk against your network. Now the last option, Azure Event Hub. So Event Hubs is a real-time data ingestion service that stream millions of events per second from any source to build dynamic data pipelines and immediately respond to business challenges. Question number 34. You are trying to create several managed Microsoft SQL Server instances in an Azure environment and receive a message that you must increase your Azure subscription limits. What should you do to increase the limit? And the options are A. Create a service health alert. B. Create a new support request. C. Upgrade your support plan. And D. Modify an Azure policy. So for this, the correct options is create a new support request. So if you want to increase the limit or quota above the default limit, then open an online customer support request. Now the other options are not correct. Add, modify an Azure policy. So Azure policy helps to enforce rules at the resource group or subscription level. The policy can help to make sure that the organization standards are followed, but cannot control default limit of resources. Next options, upgrade your support plan. So each support plan has a maximum limit set for different resources. If you want to raise the limit or quota above the default limit, open an online customer support request at no change. The last option, create a service health alert. So service health provides personalized guidance and support when issues with Azure services affect you. It can notify you, help you understand the impact of issues, and keep you updated as the issue is resolved. Service alerts cannot help to increase default limits. Question number 35. The company's support policy states that the Azure environment must provide an option to access support engineers by phone or email. You need to recommend a support plan that meets the support policy requirement. Select two correct options. A. All support plans except developer provide a technical support. B. Recommend a standard support plan. C. Recommend a basic support plan. And D. Recommend a premier support plan. So for this, the correct options are B and D. Question number 36. Which of the following statements are correct in the context of Azure support plans? Select the two correct options. The options are A. Azure free account can have an unlimited number of web apps. B. You can create up to 10 Azure free accounts by using the same Microsoft account. C. Azure standard support plan is included in an Azure free account. D. If you are using an Azure free account, you will only be exposed to a subset of Azure services. E. Azure free account has spending limits. F. Azure free account has a limit for the amount of data that can be uploaded to Azure. So the correct statements are E and F. So if you want to practice similar types of quiz and want Azure resources as a PDF format, you can refer our official website, that is Tech Cloud Solutions. Question number 37. Which of the following locations ensure data residency and compliance needs are met for customers who need to keep their data and application close? Select the correct options. And the options are A. Geographies, B. Availability zones, C. Zones D. Availability sets. So the correct answer is geographies. Geographies allow customers with a specific data residency and compliance needs to keep their data and application close. Azure divides the world into geographies that are defined by geopolitical boundaries or country borders. Now the other option that are not correct is availability zones. So availability zones are physically separate locations within an Azure region. Using availability zones will make your application highly available with 99.99% Azure SLA. Availability sets. So availability sets ensure your application remains online if a high impact maintenance event is required or if a hardware failure occurs with 99.95% Azure SLA. The last option, zone. So a zone is a geographical grouping of Azure regions for billing purposes. Question number 38. You want to be alerted when new recommendations to improve your cloud environment are available. Which service will do this? And the options are A. Azure Cost Management, B. Azure Service Health, C. Azure Advisor, and D. Azure Monitor. So the correct answer is C. Azure Advisor. So Azure advisors can alert you when new recommendations are available. Azure Advisor is a free service built into Azure that provides recommendation on high availability, security, performance, operational excellence, and cost. The advisors analyze your deployed services and looks for ways to improve your environment across those five areas. Now the others option that are not correct as Azure Monitor. So Azure Monitor offers alerts but not for new optimization recommendation. Rather it generates alert based on different metrics data, that is CPU uses and memory uses collect from VMs and other sources. Next option, Azure Service Health. So Azure Service Health offers alerts but not for new optimization recommendation. Rather, it notifies you of issues with Azure services. And the last option, that is Azure Cost Management. So Azure Cost Management offer alerts based on cost uses of your services. Question number 39. A company wants to quickly manage its individual IoT devices by using a web based user interface. Which IoT technology should it choose? And the options are A. Azure Sphere, B. IoT Central, C. IoT Hub, and D. Azure Sentinel. So the correct answer is B. IoT Central. So IoT Central quickly creates a web-based management portal to enable reporting and communication with IoT devices. The visual user interface makes it easy to quickly connect new devices and watch as they begin sending telemetry or error message. Now the other options that are not correct, IoT Hub. So IoT Hub allows bi-directional communication between IoT application and devices it manages. It does not provide a graphical user interface for device management. Next option, Azure Sphere. So Azure Sphere is hardware with an operating system which has built-in communication and security features for internet connected device. It does not provide a graphical user interface for device management. The last option, that is Azure Sentinel. So Azure Sentinel is Microsoft cloud based SIEM system which aggregates security data from many different sources. It does not provide a graphical user interface for device management. Question number 40. Which of the following is not an Azure App Service type? Select the correct option. And the options are A. Web jobs, B. Web apps, C. Mobile apps, D. API apps, and E. Desktop apps. So the correct answer is E. Desktop apps. So Azure App Service enables you to quickly and easily build web and mobile apps for any platform or device with app services. you can host the most common app service styles are web apps, API apps, web jobs, and mobile apps. So desktop apps are not supported by app services. Question number 41. Who operates Azure China region data centers? Select the correct option. The options are A. Azure China, B. Azure Global, C. Azure with China government, and D. Azure China 21 via net. So the correct option is D. So Azure China is operated by 21 via net. It's a physically separated instance of cloud services located in China. Azure China is independently operated and transacted by Shanghai Blue Cloud Technology. Question number 42. What features of a system makes it elastic? Select the correct option. The options are A. The ability to heal itself after a crash. B. The ability to increase and reduce capacity based on actual demand. C. The ability to stay up while updates are being made to the system. And D. The ability to withstand denial of service attacks. So the correct answer is B. So elasticity is the ability to automatically or dynamically increase or decrease resources as needed. Elastic resources match the current needs and add or remove resources automatically to meet future needs when it's needed. Now look why other options are not correct. The ability to heal itself after a crash is incorrect. Ability to heal itself after a crash is called disaster recovery. Disaster recovery is the ability to recover from an event that has taken down a cloud service. Next option, the ability to withstand denial of service attacks. So it is a security feature. DDoS attacks attempt to overwhelm and exhaust an application's resources, making the application slow or unresponsive to legitimate user. Azure DDoS protection combined with application design best practices provides defense against DDoS attacks. The last option, that is the ability to stay up while updates are being made to the system. So keeping the system up and running at the time of updates is achieved by availability sets update domain. Update domains are a logical section of the data center and they are implemented with software and logic. Question number 43. Which of the following describes platform as a service? Options A. Users are responsible for purchasing, installing, configuring, and managing their own software, operating systems, middleware, and application. B. Users are responsible for purchasing hardware machines and installing, configuring, and managing their own software, operating system, middleware, and application. C. Users create and deploy application quickly without having to worry about managing the underlying infrastructure. And D. Users configure the solutions as per their needs and start using it without worrying about application hosting and maintenance. So the correct option is C. So PaaS lets users create and deploy applications quickly without having to worry about managing the underlying infrastructure. You manage the application and services you develop, and the cloud service provides typically manage everything else. Now the other options like users are responsible for purchasing and manage hardware machines and installing, configuring and managing their own software. So Azure Cloud does not allow users to manage hardware machines as its responsibility of Azure. Hardware ownership with a customer comes under the private cloud, where users set up, manage, and maintain their private data center. Next option, users configure the solution as per their needs and start using it without worrying about application hosting and maintenance is incorrect as this solution comes under software as a service offering. SaaS allows users to connect to and use cloud-based app over the internet. Now the last option, that is users are responsible for purchasing, installing, configuring and managing their own software. So this solution comes under infrastructure as a service offering. IaaS is an instant computing infrastructure provision and managed over the internet. IaaS quickly scales up and down with demand, letting you pay only for what you use. Question number 44. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. You have an application that is comprised of an Azure web app that has a service level agreement of 99.95% and an Azure SQL database that has an SLA of 99.99%. The composite SLA for the application is the average of both SLAs, which is 99.97%. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise select the correct answer. The options are A, the lowest SLA associated with the application, which is 99.95%. B, no change needed. C, the highest SLA associated with the application, which is 99.99%. And D, multiplying both SLAs, which is 99.94%. So the correct answer is D. Question number 45. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. Azure Germany can be used by legal residents of Germany only. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct, otherwise select the correct answer. The options are A, only enterprises that are registered in Germany. B, no change needed. C, only enterprises that purchase their Azure licenses from a partner based in Germany. And D, any user or enterprise that requires its data to reside in Germany. So the correct option is D. So Microsoft Azure Germany is a physically isolated instance of Microsoft Azure. It uses world-class security and compliance services that are critical to German data privacy regulation for all systems and applications built on its architecture. It can be used by any user or enterprise that requires its data to reside in Germany. So if you want to practice similar types of questions and want questions in the format of PDF, you can refer our official website, that is Tech Cloud Solution. Question number 46. You are planning to automate the deployment of servers to Azure. Your manager is concerned that you may expose administrative credentials during the deployment. You need to recommend an Azure solution that encrypts the administrative credentials during the deployment. What should you include in the recommendation? The options are A, Azure Key Vault, B, Microsoft Defender for Identity, C, Azure Multi-Factor Authentication, and D, Azure Information Protection. So the correct options is A. So Azure Key Vault is a cloud service for storing your administrative credentials by keeping them in a single central locations and by providing secure access, permissions control and access logging capabilities. Now other options why those are incorrect, as Azure multi-factor authentication. So Azure MFA provides additional security for your identities by requiring two or more elements for full authentication. MFA cannot encrypt and manage administrative credential. Next option, that is Microsoft Defender for Identity. So it is a cloud-based security solution capable of detecting known malicious attacks and techniques, security issues and risk against your network. It cannot be used to encrypt and manage administrative credentials. Now the last option, that is Azure Information Protection. So Azure Information Protection helps organizations to classify their documents and emails by applying labels. Azure Information Protection cannot be used to encrypt and manage administrative credentials. Question number 47. There has been an attack on your public facing websites and the application's resources have been overwhelmed and exhausted and are now unavailable to users. What service should you use to prevent this type of attack in the future? The options are A. Azure Firewall, B. Application Gateway, C. DDoS Protection, and D. Network Security Group. So the correct answer is C. So Azure Distributed Denial of Service. DDoS attacks attempts to overwhelm and exhaust an application resources, making the application slow or unresponsive. Azure DDoS protection combined with application design best practices provide defense against DDoS attacks. Now other options that are not correct as Azure Firewall. So Azure Firewall is a network security service that protects your Azure virtual network resources by adding allow or deny rules based on different conditions. Azure DDoS service will save your services from DDoS attack and later you can block attacker IPs in the firewall rule. Next option, application gateway. So Azure application gateway is a load balancer that enables you to manage traffic to your web applications. It does not filter, it forward traffic to resources so it cannot help in case of DDoS attack. And the last option, network security group. So NSG allow you to filter network traffic to and from Azure resources in an Azure virtual network. DDoS attack should be controlled before entering to a virtual network by using Azure DDoS protection. Question number 48. This question requires you to evaluate the text inside to determine if it is correct. As an Azure customer, Azure reservation offer discounted prices if provision many resources. Select no change needed if the above statement is correct. Otherwise, select the correct answer. The options are A. Make upfront commitments on compute capacity. B. No change needed. C. Set spending limits. D. Have a free account. So the correct option is A. So Azure reservation help you save money by committing upfront to 1 year or 3 year plans for multiple products. Reservations can significantly reduce your resources cost up to 72% on pay as you go prices. Reservation provides a billing discount and don't affect the runtime state of your resources. After you purchase a reservation, the discount automatically applies to matching resources. Question number 49. You are planning to provision infrastructure as a service resource in Azure. Which one of the following resources is an example of IS? The options are A. Azure Logic App, B. Azure Virtual Machine, C. Azure SQL Database, and D. Azure Web App. So the correct answer is B. So Azure Virtual Machines is an infrastructure as a service offering. IS is an instant computing infrastructure provisioned and managed over the internet. So IS quickly scales up and down with demand, letting you pay only for what you use. So here we come to an end of this video. And if you want to practice similar type of question, you can refer our official website and also do subscribe and comment.